Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for the vacation of a lifetime. Introducing the most luxurious vacation resort on this side of the asteroid belt, the Lunar Link. Step into a world of opulence and adventure as you leave the Earth behind to embark on an exciting cosmic journey. The Lunar Link, where dreams take flight. Literally. Equipped with a state-of-the-art zero-G theme park, lavish observation decks, and exquisite dining options, the Lunar Link is the perfect destination for an unforgettable extraterrestrial holiday.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on the ADC Podcast. I'm your host, Andres Isaac Alvarez, or as a lot of you know me, by Andy, and I'm happy to go by Andy for this interview as well. I'm here with an incredibly special guest, a good friend, someone I truly admire, Amit Tishler. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, buddy. I know it's kind of short notice, and I think I had messaged you like out of nowhere. I was like, "Hey, dude, you want to jump on the podcast?"
Yeah. First of all, awesome seeing you, man. Thank you so much for having me. Like, it's been a while, and when you hit me up, I'm like, strangely good timing. Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I react fast to things, especially right now, because I'm on a marketing spree for all of this year's releases. So I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, let's do it.
I've been following your part. So I always tell people, like, anytime your name comes up, I'm like, Amit's the type of guy who is always 2 steps ahead of everyone. Like, no matter what it is, he's already on to the next thing, you know?
My wife will have a few things to say.
I just always saw you as the type of person, that always had the next thing happening. Like, all of us were like, okay, we're just gonna like sit and just do our job and like, work in animation and everything. But I always felt like you had a much bigger vision for yourself, and you were constantly trying new things and innovating and seeing the stuff you're working on today. I think it's just so brilliant that you're able to not only navigate an industry that's gone through quite a bit. I want to say you were actually, even before the crash of the industry, you were already moving on to other things. Is that correct, or what was that?
Yeah, and it's nice. It's always nice to hear how you're being perceived, because you never really know. You're living your own head. And you also, we've worked together, so you know the impression I leave when I enter a room.
That's a good story too.
I am loud, kind of obnoxious, kind of is really being kind to myself. But I am loud, I'm a little abrasive. I am the guy who always walked into the studios and went like, all right, who's in charge here? Like, let's set up a meeting. Gonna blow their minds. No, but so that's really, I mean, it's nice to hear, because from you're not wrong. Again, I didn't know that that's also how it's perceived, so that's kind of funny. But it is, in the end of the day, a lot of my journey was all about me trying to reach a certain end goal and developing a lot of skills in order to treat it almost like a means to an end. And it's very weird to think about, because it is an artistic and creative career. But I mean, if I have to like break down the path for anybody listening, I had a very strange career journey on its surface. So if you just look at how I've navigated my career and what I did, it seems a little insane. Like, how did you skip from A to B in my mind, it makes perfect sense. Because if you live in my brain and you kind of, I know my own goals and I know my own thinking. And so to me,
Yeah.
all these steps very calculated or very like responsive to things I was looking for or scouting for. Or so the track kind of makes sense. But anybody, I think, meeting me in different parts of my life has a very, so the consistent thing, they all have a pretty clear image of my personality. Because
Right.
because I think that's a little hard to hide for good or bad. But the thing that catches people off guard is that depending on when you know me, how you think about me professionally tends to be very different, and it's a little jarring. So I started off as, if I just go from like the timeline point of view,
Yeah.
I started off as just a production artist, as a 2D animator, right? When we met, I was working at the same studios.
Yeah.
On
Cosmic
TV,
toast, right?
Cosmic, oh dear Lord in heaven. Yes, Cosmic Toast.
You knew that was
And you know,
coming.
this was after, by this point, like I've already worked on TV shows back in my home country. When I moved to the States, I started working in games. I kind of always jumped, and this detail is
Mhm.
important. I jumped a lot between software and TV. And that actually really, that and my own strange fandom or love of media really played a part in kind of the long-term vision of what I wanted to do. But again, on the surface, started as a 2D animator. All of a sudden, I think this really caught people off guard. Not me, but definitely anybody observing from
Right.
the outside. All of a sudden, I'm a startup founder, and me and my wife are on the stage of TechCrunch Disrupt, and we're raising, like almost a couple million in like VC funding and running a whole team to develop essentially like technology that probably seemed absolutely insane to anybody looking at me from the outside, right? Because
Right.
it's
Right.
gradual. Like first, I essentially worked as like a business development executive for a games company all of a sudden. So I'm getting sent to like meetings in Microsoft and Nintendo, and all of a sudden start like, where did
Wow.
this come from? So again, all of this seemed insane on the outside. From that point on, the company was acquired, so I ended up kind of getting looped back into the production side of the industry, less in media tech and more in new media, because the company that acquired our company was a essentially animation studio that also had like a new media or software division. Our entire team were brought in and kind of infused with theirs. So all of a sudden, I'm working on projects that are more on that track, but I'm back into
Wow.
working more or less with the same brands because now you're doing something with WB Games or Skydance, but it's a location-based experience, a mobile app. So all of the skills up to that point really kind of, like come together to
What year was this? Was this like around the, I want to say
uh
like
we
20?
sold the company in 2001. We founded the
Wow.
company in 2017. My
Wow.
last job as an animator, as a production artist, was in 2016.
Wow. So you had
Yeah,
already, yeah, I remember that. Like it was suddenly like, you know, you were just off to
yeah,
new adventures and you
yeah.
know, I
And
had
I'll backtrack in a second to
yeah.
because again, it seems jarring from the outside, not from where I stand. From where I stand, I'm like, finally, next milestone, boom, right?
Right.
But really, if you're not aware of everything else that I'm doing, or you're not in my head, which thank God, never be in my head. It is an awful, loud, noisy place. Um, but after that, that was the next 3 years of my life. And all of a sudden, if you're following up with me since like 2003, wait, he's a comic book author now? He's got like published titles, like he's doing these cross-media adaptations. Where the hell all of it is coming from? So that's what I mean. Like, so right now, I feel like in this current stage of my career, a lot of people that I work with identify me as, oh, he's a comic book writer, and he's also a producer that publishes all of these like adaptations for
Right.
work. Like, but once again, if you talk to people from like 10 years ago, oh, you mean the animator?
Yeah.
All of
It's
these
like different
like
seasons of your career
exactly.
and like all those seasons kind of like tying together into like an overall what can we say, like a career mosaic? You had
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a good way of framing it. So, once again, it looks very jarring from the outside. But once you kind of realize what my goal has always been and how I've navigated this, it kind of falls in line into this kind of creepily calculated path that is both very calculated, but also just very reactive to opportunity. The only theme that I can say is consistent across everything that I have done. My goal of moving, like across the ocean to the States to begin with was
Mhm.
always I want to be able to, and I'm going to make this as broad as possible and then dive in deeper. I want to create my own, or I want to be able to do my own thing. Create
Sorry, looks like I have a little
because
internet
again, I was
hiccup here.
always television and
Sorry.
loves comics and loves all
Oh,
these
there you
media.
go. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
you cut out for just a second. I think it was just a little internet hiccup. Um, would you
Okay.
mind repeating that again? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, yeah, from
I'll
which
cut
point?
that in the final edit.
All
But
good, all good. Which point?
you're I think it was yeah, I think it was like maybe maybe like 30 seconds back. But if you want to just start over with your what you were saying prior, I think just like 30 seconds was just completely like
I'm trying to think of like where to start.
had
I don't mind
frozen
backtracking.
on
I
the
just need to know more or less where to
Oh yeah, I want to say it was like when you were talking about coming to the States, I think is right when it started to like kind of
Okay.
trail off a little bit.
Okay, okay. So, um, like when I moved to the States, I had a very clear goal in mind. And that's the consistent theme of my essentially entire career. The one thing that kind of binds it all together and makes it make sense in the end. And that's the fact that I always wanted to do my own thing. Now, I'm a huge pop culture consumer, right? So I'm a big fan of comic books, of video games, of television. To this day, it is a lot of what inspires me, and it's what always drove me. And where I grew up, being able to execute on that level, the kinds of dreams that I wanted to
Mhm.
accomplish was just impossible. So that has always been the consistent thing. To me, the output could kind of be anything that interests me or anything that I'm passionate about within all of those realms, because I was never a person who's just like, I am just a video game guy. No, I love all of these things. I know I have a capacity to be able to execute in some form on all of these, like products or all of these types of mediums. And I want to be able to do that, but not just for hire, like we did early on in our career. I want to do my own
Right.
thing. But especially, I am older now. So at the time, you had even less options of being able to get your work out there, right? It was very, very limited.
Very different. Very
Yeah,
different.
very different reality. So the truth is, I needed to be in the hub where these things are financed and these things are produced and develop a certain credibility within that hub to be able to execute, to be able to sell these ideas, to be able to get them. So that's what always drove me. To me, the act of working in production was about two things. It's your jobby job. It's the job that pays
Right.
the bills and it still is your craft. But to me, that was never the creative part because, as animators, you're a cog in the machine. There's
Exactly.
not a lot of creative input. But what it does give you, aside from nightmares from working in these studios, what it also gives, and money to live, what it does give you is it puts your foot in the door. It gets you into the
Yeah.
industry. So when you look at me going into the studio loudly going, who's in charge here? How do I talk to you? How do I pitch to this person? That's where that came from. Because whenever I stepped into a production, immediately I was starting to scan like who is the person here that I should talk to try to advance the thing that I really want. And at the time, a
Exactly.
lot of my focus was I need to start learning how to write, how to pitch shows. I've already had some experience because I started from, a lot of like how I built my early portfolio was short films and film festivals and stuff like that. But
Right, right.
it's a craft that needs to be studied both from a creative front, but also a business front, right? And that is something,
I see.
right? And because no matter what, you can be the best writer, you can be the best artist. In the end of the day, and this is going to sound to anybody in creative fields a little bit, uh, I don't know, alienating maybe, but it is the truth. You don't have to be the best to be successful. You need to be good enough. But if only the best made it through,
Mhm.
like we wouldn't have 90% trash on TV, right? So that is
True,
just an immediate
true.
indicator, right? That it's not a meritocracy. So something else is going on. You want to be as good as you can be because you want to create something
I
excellent that you're
love
proud
that.
of. But there is another component that helps people get through, and that component is that, and I hate this word, but it is the hustle, right? It's identifying how the system actually works, not how you emotionally feel that it works, but how it
Oh,
actually works. And that requires you to have a lot of conversations and be willing to learn and be willing to be, blunt and bold and just go into a room and say, this is what I really want. This is what I'm interested in. Are you willing to give me these answers? And a lot of it is trial and error.
mm,
And there is always a risk, right? Like you can get rejected, but in the end of the day, you have to go through it because it'll help you understand what you need to do to achieve the things that you're looking for. So for me, it all started from
incredible.
how do I moved to LA, I got my first job, right, which helps from a visa perspective. And then the
Where did you
next thing was
start,
like,
by the way? Do you mind if I ask, like, what was your first studio that you got a chance
I
to play around
started,
with?
yeah, yeah. So I did my master's in Minneapolis first, and then I moved to LA. And the first place I worked in LA, not
Right.
in role, the first place when I moved to the States was Way Forward Technologies, a games company.
Oh, got it,
Yeah.
got it. Very
And
nice.
two like Nintendo DS games that I did there, and you're gonna love this. So one of them was an Adventure Time game. You know what the other one was? Lala Loopsy.
Oh my gosh.
Correct. That
That wow.
that was probably so for anybody listening. Lala Loopsy is a toy brand under MGA Entertainment.
That's right.
Um, the same company that does Bratz. This is like the younger version. It was a very popular toy line. And there were a lot of different cross-media adaptations. There were video games, and there was a TV show
Right, right.
that we
That's
worked on
yeah.
during that time. That was on Nick Jr. My first Lala Loopsy project was that game. So when I applied for the job, that probably stood out as like, oh, all right, he's already animated these characters. There you go.
This guy
Um,
knows the show.
so that's where because I was part of the Lala Oopsies team, like
Okay,
those
got it.
days, man.
Were you
So
were you, were you live when you say LA, were you living like in the valley or were you like
yeah,
outside? Okay.
I was
Like
living in Burbank.
oh, okay,
Um,
nice, nice. Because I mean, for a lot of people who don't know, like Burbank was kind of like the central hub for a lot of Cartoon Network,
yeah.
Disney, Nickelodeon, and then also these other studio houses, which a lot of people don't
Mhm.
know are the actual studios a lot of times that are
Yeah.
doing the physical work of the cartoon, like actually drawing it, animating it. And then Disney or Nickelodeon just slaps their name on it and says, hey,
Yep.
like, but actually, most of the
Yep.
work was being done at a studio like Cosmic Toast, the one that,
That's
you,
right.
you had, and you came into Cosmic Toast at a very interesting time because I was there a little bit before that regime had taken over. I think you were under
Hmm.
Deb and a few other,
That's
uh,
right.
and they had just gone through, kind of almost like a bankruptcy, I think, because they'd lost a lot of funding. They'd been trying to kind of find their voice.
Hmm.
And then I think a friend of mine, Jose Hernandez, was telling me,
Jose, yes.
yeah, Jose
Legend.
was like, hey, like, you should come back. They're kind of doing some new things. And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, but like they're not really paying. So, I'm like, I kind of want to focus on more paid work and everything. He's like, no, no, like they got a budget now. He didn't tell
Hmm.
me what the budget was. I'm like, okay, like I'm guessing it's gonna be, a little bit on the lower end, but
Yep.
what the heck? Sometimes, taking a job is not always about like the highest pay or even like the most prestigious, but sometimes it's like I want to work with my friends, I want to just be around my buddies and, kind of have fun for a few months. I think that's a lot of things people don't realize too. Like if you're working in TV, your landscape is ever changing. You're never really ever going to be in the same place. We're sort of what, like wanderers, we're
Yeah,
wandering
drifters.
the
Yep.
earth, and sort of finding adventures as we go.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember around that time, you guys had taken over. And for those of you who don't know, can you describe the building of Cosmic Toast? Like what? What the?
Oh dear. This went through phases, right? So for the history of how I entered that production,
Oh yes,
I've
yes, sorry.
heard a lot of the nightmare stories from before. I like that place was a nightmare in general, but I wasn't there during the really bad times.
Oh, that's
When
right.
we were part of the reason, the team that was brought in that I was part of were part of the reason that the Lala Loopsy show was actually secured, right? Because
Whoa.
they got a straight to DVD movie at first, and a lot of the team that they had in-house wasn't experienced enough to take it on, and they didn't have enough bandwidth to take it on. So they were like,
Mm,
okay, we need a team that's going to knock it out of the park because if we get this, we might be able to get episodes from the actual show, which is the bigger contract. So that's when they hired, like me, Jeffrey Johnson, Rich Aarons, like Chris Bourne. We were all brought in. We weren't even in the hot box, which I'll describe in a second. We were brought into the Magnolia building that they had like that what was their name? Cine. They had like another company that was
oh yeah. I'm
something.
I'm it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm trying to remember it
Right,
too, but
Cine something. They
yeah.
put us there, which is a slightly nicer building, but they were literally building the office around us. So they put us all in one room
Ah,
and we just cranked that entire 40-minute movie out, 10 of us. Like
wow.
beginning to end in about a month and a half. It was
Wow.
insanity, but they needed people who had a little bit more experience to do that. So they
Right.
brought in all of us. Then, because that movie was shipped on time, unbelievably enough, they did manage to secure episodes from the show, and they wanted to keep us because, okay,
You
these
guys killed it.
and then they infused us with the rest of the team and put us in the hot box. That's how I would describe that studio. It is a warehouse in Burbank. That man,
What was
it's
it next to? Do you remember what it was next to? Uh,
nothing.
like
I
when
don't know.
when you'd walk in, I don't know if you remember hearing the sounds of barking dogs
Oh
or
yeah, there was a. You're right. There was a rescue dog thing. Didn't one
yeah.
of the dogs bite like one of? I don't know. Like
I heard there was some dog fights and somebody had like hopped the fence to like break up a dog fight or something. And
oh,
I,
that's
I just
great.
I just remember being in meetings and like, just endless like barking. And I'm just like, what am I doing here? Like I need to get
Anybody
out
that
of
has
here.
a glamorous idea of how productions in Hollywood goes, let me tell you, no.
I I always said too, it reminded me of a casino because the animator's room, you guys had no windows. It was like
Nope.
black walls
Yep.
and
Sweatshop.
no no visible clocks anywhere. So I mean
Yep.
you could be there and it could be 2 a.m. and you wouldn't know, you're just
Yep.
completely in the twilight zone of
Yeah. It had a very sweat. It's like a slightly nicer sweatshop. Like,
yeah, it
you
definitely
know,
had that vibe, but I mean some amazing talents. I mean
yeah.
so many people, yourself included, all went on to, obviously much bigger things, but that's okay. Like I always tell a lot of my students now that I'm working with them, like you want that. You want to kind of like go into lots of different studios or lots of different things, but it's a little bit sad because for a lot of my students, especially the ones I'm working with who are like graduating college and, I'm helping them with their storyboards and stuff, there is no jobs for a lot of them. A lot of them are like,
Yeah.
look, I've applied for like almost 2 years, and I haven't even gotten a rejection letter back. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
that is really crazy that, maybe you and me were in sort of the golden era of like being able to at least book work, on a fairly consistent basis. And I don't know if you remember this. I remember you had so much work, you couldn't even take it all. And you
Yeah, I
had given
started outsourcing. Yeah.
you actually had given me a job at
Yeah.
Starburns, I think, because you were just too
Yeah.
busy. And I'm like, Amit, are you serious? You're just like, yeah, dude, just go. And remember showing up, and they're like, oh, are you Amit's friend? I'm like, yeah, I'm from Cosmic Toast. And he told me, he's like, oh yeah, like, you want to just get to work? I'm like, okay, thank you. So I don't know if I ever thanked you for that, but thank you very much,
Dude, my,
because
my pleasure. Are you
I
kidding?
had so much fun at Starburns, and I think the only thing that sucked was you weren't there. That would have been more fun if you
Oh,
were there. But
well, you say that now, but no,
but
it's
it's such a different time now. With all that going on, and I know you talked a little bit about funding and how funding has changed so much. Like, in the early days, you're talking about finding what private investors, and then what would you say it's like today with like the culture of like Kickstarter, Indiegogos, like more of a crowdfunding thing? Like, how has that sort of changed your approach to getting things, out there?
yeah. So this is a very good and very loaded question when it comes to how I view the industry, because I feel like my view of the entire media landscape is a little different than most people's, simply because in a sense, in the last decade plus, I have gotten to see I've been in rooms and got to see things from multiple angles, from the financial side, from the business side, from the production side. So you really get the full picture, not just in a single industry, but in three of them: in games, in just technology, and in traditional entertainment. And actually, it's four now in publishing as well, like traditional publishing. And that really paints a picture in terms of and like it's my own biases at this point, for good or bad, but I have a very specific view, and I optimize a lot of my strategy around what I think is going to happen next. So if I go all the way back to one of the first things that you said about the golden age, I would disagree that it was a golden age. It was a
Mm,
trash heap, right? This is one of the things, again, for anybody listening. The bad news is, yes, things are absolutely awful right now. The good news is it's a pendulum. This did happen before, and it'll happen again. In 2008, the financial crash brought down the industry with it as well. Not as bad
wow.
as it is now, but
Right.
I remember that very vividly. My first animation job, I was in a studio, and I was like, excited. Oh, first full-time job. But this was 2008. I just graduated from undergrad. And here's a good thing to note for future reference. When the studio stopped bringing the cleaners in to save money, and you have little like dust chunks rolling around in the office, red flag. Layoffs are
Whoa.
coming. So the first studio literally shut down because the work has just completely dried up. The economic crash trickled down, and bam. And things were bad for a while. Again, I managed to kind of jump to a software company as an artist, and that carried me until I did my master's in then like Minneapolis. And then when I moved to the States, when I moved to LA, it was already 2012. So we're talking about the span of 4 years that the industry was demolished, right? Very similar to
Wow.
what we're experiencing now, but not on the same scale, because now we're also seeing it across multiple um,
Yeah. A lot of
industries and for
different.
different reasons. But I have to remind people this happened before. When we were working in a lot of these studios, let's say between 2012, 2016, 17, um, there wasn't a resurgence, but there was like work eventually starts coming back gradually. But, to remind you, salaries were lower, like the contracts were shorter, like everything was
Yeah.
pretty shitty, and it was very, very competitive. So we weren't living through the good times. And maybe if you go back to the 90s, you can call it the good times. We were living through essentially a recovery period that was very gradual. And a lot of artists did not survive in the industry during that recovery period. We were lucky enough to also come in and we were younger and we were eager and we were energetic and more savvy on the transition to digital and motion tweening. So there were a lot of things going on. When I look at what's happening right now, first of all, I will say this. I There was a big streaming boom, right? That lasted at least a few years. And
Yeah.
people who know me and have hung out with me a lot during that time, I was coming out of startup, right? I was basically, we sold the company and we were starting to settle. And in 2021, when everybody was celebrating, the mindset that really concerned me, even among my friends, was, oh, things are fantastic. This is going to last forever. And I
Whoa.
kept on shouting at people, telling them this is going to blow any second. The reason is I just spent 4 years in startup. I know what these business models look like, and I know a
Wow.
bubble when I see one. So the entire strategy of how I've optimized my own both creative and business strategy in terms of what to do with my own properties, what to do with my own creations, was very much around there's a big explosion coming. This is going to pop any minute now, and I have to be ready with how I operate, not for the apocalypse, but for the day after. So just so you
Wow.
know, a lot of what you're seeing right now in terms of all the titles that are coming out, all of these adaptations, this is a plan I put in place that people who have worked with me specifically know about this because I've been talking about it since like 2020, honestly. It's the
Wow.
idea of this is going to happen. We can't stop it, but we can prepare for the day after. And a lot of the reason that I've managed to still survive, endure, and essentially when this was part of it, right? Like, hey, once everything sinks, I'm going to still stay buzzing. This seems organic, and I can tell you it absolutely wasn't. There's luck involved in that I managed to pull it off somehow, but I will be lying if I said, "Oh, it's just things that happened." No, it didn't. A lot of it was very much me seeing what's about to happen, going, "Okay, I'm going to start doing everything in my power while I can so that when this happens, I'm ready." And then the day after, I can utilize it for my advantage if I play my cards right. All of these are gambles. But the minute you start seeing the full picture, you remove the uh I always like switch hats between this is my business or producer hat and
Right.
my fully artiste hat. And I do wear both very authentically because when I'm in the artist mode, when I'm creating, when I'm writing, it's my passion. I love it, right?
Nice.
And I love the work and I love the fandom and I love everything about it. This is my happy zone. But I also know that if I want to continue doing the things that I've worked so hard to achieve, I need to wear that other hat shamelessly. I need to understand it because otherwise you are just following your heart. And like we said in the beginning, that's not enough. If that was enough, then everything we see on TV and in comics would be the most high quality, beautiful. But no, we live in an era where there's both really fantastic stuff out there and a lot of garbage. And
Right.
some of the garbage is very well funded garbage. It's supported garbage. So, and this is without taking a shit on people's tastes, but some stuff is just objectively shit. So, but all I'm saying is that the fact is there is more than this isn't a meritocracy, as I think everybody's very aware nowadays. Um, you do need to think of yourself as a business and you need to not stick your head in the sand. And when early on you mentioned like it always seems like, oh, you were one step ahead, it's weird to hear that from the outside because in my head I know that that's what I try to do.
Yeah,
Always,
definitely.
it's not sitting on my laurels. It's not looking, well, things are good right now, so it's probably going to be like this forever. I come from like a Holocaust survivor family. We're always like, all right, The Nazis are there. Like the joke is
Right,
always
like
the Germans are coming. What are we gonna do when they arrive? Like
like,
it's a joke, but it is a
but it's
mind.
not. It's literally like
Yeah,
survival at the highest level. And
yeah,
I no, I when I first met you, I instantly got that feeling from you. I'm like, this is someone who's thinking ahead and obviously has a much bigger vision of themselves and what they can do. And I thought to myself, like, that's great. That's someone who's really like not going to have to struggle in the same ways that a lot of us would struggle in terms of like, you sit at a job and you feel comfortable and you're just, wearing your artist hat and that's good enough, but what happens, like you said, when the bubble is coming and a lot of people are not ready or not prepared for that, and then suddenly boom, it explodes, and you're scrambling for your next gig, or you're scrambling for your next thing. Um, i think what's interesting, I want to get your take on this. So with crowdfunding now becoming, part of the mix, what do you think about it? Do you think it's been something that's been good for your creative endeavors? Do you feel like do you like it better than having to, go with like private investors like you did back in '01? Like what do you think about today, like in terms of, the Kickstarter, Indiegogo type culture?
yeah. I'm gonna be once again very frustrating to listeners because it's not gonna be a straight answer. I feel
Okay.
like my view on that is definitely nuanced. Well, first the big caveat is I actually don't have that much experience with it. Um, My all of my publishing deals came from publishers literally,
Hmm,
giving me a publishing deal, financing everything, paying me as well. It's very traditional TV style deals, which by the way is
nice.
by design. But currently I am, so I'm gonna give different angles, right? So currently
Yeah.
there is a Kickstarter campaign that I'm helping promote, but I'm actually not running it. It's the publisher. And when a
Ah, okay.
publisher like Humanoids, the ones that are running, so for anybody listening, Humanoids is running Stomping Grounds and Kaiju Heart. It's like a mixed campaign for a book that me and Elliot Spurl, I don't know if you worked with him in Starburns, and he's on Bob's Burgers now. Good friend of mine.
Sounds very familiar. Very
So
familiar.
we've released a lot of titles together. I kind of dragged him along with my journey, and we've
Nice.
done a lot of really cool things together. So this is one of our books that's getting published by Humanoids. I think we just went in like 85% funded with like 14 days to go. It's going great.
Nice.
I am not the one running it. So the publisher, the book in this case, and this is an important distinction, it's already done. So they're not even raising to finance the book. It's a direct to consumer pre-order campaign because they're essentially offering a special version that's Kickstarter exclusive that you can get early before the book hits the market in November. And by the way,
Oh,
that
got
version is
it.
awesome because it's like hardcover and it has a lot of behind the scenes. Like it's kind
Love
of an
it.
amazing offering, but it's something a lot of publishers that are established are doing just because the market is so competitive and it's hard to sometimes find your core audience. So very
True.
early on, they go, okay, this is essentially how we run a marketing campaign and find our fans early and give them something special for committing. So that one, Stomping Grounds, is basically we pitched it as Bob's Burgers meets Pacific Rim. And that if that sounds like your jam, go
Wow.
for it. Um, it's an amazing book. It's a graphic novel. So, okay, now putting the plug to the side. Uh, I have not ran. I think like I've had an early experience with Kickstarter when it just started. That was a small project and that was fine. It was funded, but for a very long time, I've had a very not necessarily a positive view of how this platform is used in some ways, but it's
Mhm.
very nuanced. I'm not opposed to it at all. I think that there is people that think that it's a solution to getting stuff done. I disagree.
Mm.
It is not an alternative, and there's multiple reasons for that. There's a this is somebody that I feel very comfortable plugging because I think his web show and podcast are really good. Eric Calderon talks about the same thing. When I listen to his thing, I'm like,
Oh,
this is the thing that yeah, yes. So he recently posted something very similar to what I'm about to say, which is, when I'll give a very specific example of like comics, for example. So let's say that you run a successful, you're like, I tried to pitch my thing to a lot of different publishers, and they all said no for whatever economic reasons. Maybe it's not for their core audience. Maybe I'm not established enough. Really, anything at all. Um,
Hmm.
I think when you try to fundraise, and this is as someone who has designed and built scalable platforms in tech, I'm saying this, right? These
Right.
platforms are not fair game, right? They're not really democratized in the way people think that they are.
Mm.
To quote Eric Calderon specifically on this, it's not for you to find your audience, it's for you to tap into an audience that's already there. So the people who do best on Kickstarter, like best, are the worst examples of how to use that platform, or for the individuals that want to get
Hmm.
into it. Because a lot of the biggest Kickstarters you'll ever see, usually an established brand or people that already have an audience, and it's just their way of getting that audience in early. For everybody else, it's kind of like YouTube and any other platform, right? The platform is not actually motivated to help you. It's not motivated to elevate you. And you are competing with a lot of people that do have means, a fan base, and marketing resources, which means for everybody that's left behind, you're able to, if you're not somebody who's very savvy or have a product that has, you're always hit a wall. So
Yeah.
there's different scales to Kickstarter, but if I think of a very like microscopic example that I see a lot of, if your goal is just to make a thing for yourself and for your friends and to have it out there, okay, yeah, that you might be able to do it because the ask is pretty low. If your goal is to kickstart something from scratch, to make it something that is scalable, that is for growth, to bring it to an audience, it's probably not the best way to go. And the easiest way to break it down is, let's say that you are a comic writer. Like I said, you're trying to pitch,
Yeah.
it doesn't work, right? And then you go, you know what? Fine. Nobody wants it, but I want to do it. I am going to kickstart, like I'm going to run a Kickstarter where I try to get like, $5,000 just so I can execute, issue 1 to 5. And you're raising, let's say you're raising like $3,000 to do the whole
Right.
thing. In practice, the budget that a publisher would put into books like that, if they finance them, it's in the 5 figures. It takes a lot more than that. Not just
Wow.
because of production, but because you have an entire pipeline. In order to get to audiences in that market specifically, and this is where understanding the market is really important.
Hmm.
Digital in traditional comics, not webtoons, digital is the lowest, smallest, most insignificant source of revenue, right? Most of
Wow.
the money in publishing still comes from selling physical copies of,
Physical.
and the way
Wow.
to get it to stores, you're trying to do it at scale so that it's actually financially viable. You have to get as many, books on shelves. In order to do that, you do need a publisher that has the relationship with the distributors like Simon and Schuster, or
Hmm.
Diamond is now a clusterfuck, but Diamond is the same. But people who have these retail relations and can get stuff into shelves, and it's an entire industry, established pipelines that individuals cannot really tap into in the same way. So if
Wow.
you're going back to like this like $5,000, like let's say that you did it, okay? If your goal is to find an audience, that's not going to get you there because you're essentially telling who's going to put in this $5,000. If you're a known brand, it's actually a great way to do it. But once again, that's why I'm
Right.
separating it. Because if you already have an audience, I'm a writer who's been working for years. My audience follows me everywhere. If I say I want to make this thing and I don't want to use a publisher, they can probably get it directly to their audience will just show up. If you're not one of these people, what you're actually doing is going, okay, where is this 5,000 going to come from? A little bit of it is going to come from organic. Some people just want to support. A lot of it is friends and family that you're kind of like shaking down to try to get people to pledge, right? In practice, for such low amounts, you're already not selling them. So you're making a very limited print run, right?
Yeah, right.
Very few. You don't have enough of a budget unless you make a bigger raise to really do a lot of print. So it's mostly just digital that maybe then you'll be able to slap into Amazon and nobody's going to see it because Amazon is massively flooded with content and people have ad money to spend that you don't. So it just
Right.
goes into the void. And the only people you have reached are essentially your friends, who some of them are doing it for you, not because they're actually interested in reading your thing. So then you see that pool of your actual readership narrow down more and more and more until if you've done this entire thing just to reach like 10, 20, 50 people,
Hmm.
I don't know if that's actually why. Like, so that's what I mean. If your goal is just to make it, and that's fine then. If your goal is to establish an intellectual property that you can grow or get longevity or reach a larger audience, you can be very
Yes.
close to like, yeah, but publishers will have some control. That's a different conversation. But the thing that they will get you, especially early on, they will get you validated. And no matter how badly they will do better than you in getting your name out there and on shelves, which will make your next endeavor easier to establish. This is where the impulse, I want it now, versus I need to take all the steps in this long process to try and maximize the end results. And I think that's where Kickstarter can be very misleading as a platform,
Right, right. Because you think
right?
about it, like a lot of creators and sometimes I go on it just to like check it out and see what's out there and see if
Yeah.
I can discover interesting things. I don't really like purchase stocks or anything, but I do try and like, again, like you said, organically find things that I believe in, or I just think, wow, this is really interesting that this person's putting this together. I do see other like colleagues and people that I've worked with, now starting their own shows. And um, again, everything I think is like still very modest budget wise. I
Yeah.
imagine they're probably not making enough to, truly pay the bills. But, like you said, if they have another jobby job, then, this could be a nice, fun way to just at least
Absolutely.
stay in the game,
Yeah.
especially
It's a
too
good
with,
way of it's a good way of creating these kinds of things. So
right,
nobody can take that away. And once again, if you have certain resources, then Kickstarter can be a great platform because this is the other like open secret. Most of the campaigns that pass, if you're not, I'll say this as somebody who knows enough about the back end and is even immersed in it right now, because there are campaigns that I'm going to be running with another company down the line. But I can already
nice,
tell you right now, we're not relying on organic here. There are entire industries and agencies that know how to operate within these platforms, and there is a method to the madness. So when you see essentially any campaign usually that goes beyond a certain scale, like you're now in the six figures or like very
right,
high, like if it's a creator that didn't have like a really strong fan base or a brand without a really strong fan base prior, do not fool yourself into thinking that that's an organic thing. People were just passionate about it and found it. There are agencies that do very accurate A/B testing in order to be able, and they use very professional tools and methodologies to be able to find this audience, to be able to know how to convert them. Like it's not cynical, but it is a methodology. It's an actual marketing practice. And we've actually teamed up with an agency like that for the campaign that we're going to run next year because we know that otherwise we're just going to hit, no matter how well we do,
right,
a certain wall. And I think that reality is not very transparent because most people coming into it, they just want to produce a thing. Um, and there are other complications. If you're trying to produce a physical product, even if you manage to get your funding, right? And you now have the
hmm
money theoretically to do it. Have you actually done the unit economics? Do you know if it's a physical product? Do you know the manufacturers? Have you figured out fulfillment? Like there are so many logistics that are
yeah,
tied beyond just making a thing that you are not even necessarily thinking about when you're doing this, and people get in a lot of trouble because they realize, oh my God, so yes, I got the money, but now how do I do this? And all of a sudden,
Right.
a lot of the money they raise doesn't even go to production. They realize just getting it to the backers costs me a lot more, and now I'm left with, like I'm in the red. Like it's
Like shipping costs and all those types of things that
yeah,
you don't think about,
absolutely.
especially because people want physical things, like you said. They want actually to like hold something in their hands,
Yeah.
which a good mentor of mine, Darwin Cook, was like, everything should just be digital. Everything should be like a quarter, and I was like, you know, it's funny because, he was saying this back in like the 2014, 2015 days. He passed, I think in 2016, but um, he was saying give up on physical media. And I thought it was just really interesting how physical media has really come back in a big way where you know we have so many screens to look at. When you do have something in front of you that's physical, it's such a unique experience. My
Yeah.
daughter, who's 3, she has a tablet, she's seen streaming and all that sort of stuff. But when I get a book, like a physical book of like Monsters Inc. or something, because she loves that movie, she will sit there and literally just focus on turning each page, feeling the page, looking
Yeah.
at the colors. Like there's just something so magical about that physical feeling, that touch and feel, of something. And again, like I said, when I had first started, even before animation, comics was always the thing like I wanted to do. Like that was the thing that like I had looked at. I kind of grew up in the 90s boom, like when Image Comics was doing its stuff.
Hmm.
Um, regardless of, all that, but like it did inspire me and I felt like, wow, this is really cool. And again, like seeing that there's a pathway now to just being a storyteller,
Yeah.
um, getting your own products out there, in whatever form that is, I thought that was just very interesting, though, like I said, how you've been able to think of yourself not only as, again, just a creative, but also a business minded person and say, how am I going to marry these two together for the common goal of actually getting this project off the ground? And then when it's off the ground, how can I continue to keep it going forward?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because that, again, with the students that I work with on a regular basis, they're so lost right now. They're like, we don't
Yeah.
know where to go. We don't know how to navigate this new landscape. So I kind of feel like in a way you've been teaching a master class right now in, how to view your talent and your skill and to not look at yourself as a one-dimensional type of thing, but multidimensional and
Yeah.
constantly like all these things are important, not just being able to draw
Yeah.
well or animate well, but how do you market yourself well? How do you take that thing, and how do you build it? So it seems like you've always put much more pressure on yourself to try and find something even greater than just, hey, Amit, I've got this dream job for you to work in animation. Okay, great, but what's next? What's the next thing? I
Yeah,
don't know.
it comes from, I think it comes from like a few places, right? There is the practical part of it of if you're a one-trick pony, your value just depreciates over time. That there's no way around it. Because no matter
Mhm.
how good you are when you come out, I can tell you the younger people are just going to kick your ass at the same craft. They're going to be more energetic. They're going to be younger. They're going to be faster. They're going to be using better tools. A lot of the talent coming out right now, they may struggle with work because of just the state of the industry. So many of them are so much better than any of us have ever been in our own profession, right? So,
True.
and that's always going to be the case, and it's beautiful. Like to me, that is a great thing. The other issue is you do have to look at patterns, right? The fact is talent has gotten more talented and more skilled than ever before. Work is paying less and is less stable than it's ever been. And this is the reality a lot of people are stepping into. Anybody no matter what time period you're in, if you do not adapt, if you dig your heels in and go like, no, but it's my thing, and you feel entitled, like forever I should just be appreciated because I was, you're not gonna survive. You're gonna get
Mm,
booted, and this is true to every profession because the world just moves forward. So a
mhm,
lot of people get spat out because they refuse to adapt. And at some point, the world stops accommodating them because, of course, it would. So to me, a lot of it was also just diversification of skill sets, partially because I know that you never know where career is going to take you. Like you all of a sudden, for me, like at this stage of my career, I seek out partnerships with companies or established partners that I can learn new things from, right? Or
mm,
I pursue industries I've never touched, but that I know just enough about to be able to enter, to learn what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, to see if there's any vulnerabilities for me to, in a sense, exploit or take advantage of, but also to understand how to then apply it to everything that I'm doing. That is always a good thing. There's no minus in understanding how these things work. So I definitely encourage. I'm teaching right now in Vancouver Film School, like writing for.
excellent.
And the one of the things I always tell my students there is you guys always have to think of yourselves as both an, an artist or a writer, but also as a business, and you have to understand the other side. And I think that's where a lot of talent fails in a because of a very bizarre mindset that I always feel like is worth addressing. I feel like, for anybody in the arts, the very idea of dealing with the big B, like business, is almost like a dirty word, right? It's almost like a dirty practice. Like, oh, and I don't understand where that came from. I mean, I do. Like,
Right.
culturally, I understand where that framework came from. But it is bizarre to me because never in the history of mankind have artists not been businessmen. Like, I always tell people, like, you think the Sistine Chapel, do you think this was Michelangelo's passion project in that sense? No, the church paid for it. It was a work
Exactly.
for hire, and he had a team, and he had a studio full of interns. This was a very crafty businessman. But it doesn't mean he wasn't an incredible artist.
Right.
Absolutely was. But in order to reach that scale, what funded most of his work? The church, the big clients, the Disney of the time, and probably
Exactly.
also now. But the fact is, that has always been the case because as an artist, your art is something, no matter how you view it, and this sounds, again, cold to say, it's a product. You're selling it. You're selling yourself as a brand, as an artist, but you're selling your work. So all of this does have to sit in the same box as your emotional feelings about it, and there's nothing shameful. Like in the
Hmm.
end, you're producing a comic book. You love this story and it means everything to you and it came from the heart and all of this. What is it? It's a book. It's a fucking book on a shelf. It has a price tag on it. It is a product. And it's a product that fits under a specific category that precedes you. It has existed long before you've entered this field. So if you want to sell it, if you want to make it, if you want to get it funded, if you want to get it marketed, well, guess what? You're making a book, and a book is a
Wow.
product. So art and product do go hand in hand. We are very prone to seeing the cynical side of it, right? The predatory side of it. But
Hmm.
people lose sight of the fact that no, that's just bad business. That's bad practice. That's bad artistry. But you can never detach those two things. And for us, for me and you, we started as production artists. What is a production art? It's a service. You're an animation industry plumber or builder.
Exactly.
What you're
Exactly.
doing, you are offering your craft as a service, no different from a plumber, from a builder, from any other craftsman. And the work that you're doing for your clients, if you're a storyboard artist on Bob's Burgers, if you're an animator on Lala Loopsy, people feel a lot of ownership over it. And I always tell them, don't, because it's not your work. No matter how you look at it, no matter how many hours you've put into it, it is not yours, right? It is someone
Right.
else's, and you're just providing a service on it. So your sense of ownership is really just between you and yourself, and your sense of disappointment is kind of on you at that point. Because look, when I feel like as animators, we always like you kind of go like, oh, my credit at the end of, like show
Yeah.
is like on HBO. And I'm like, and now my name appears on the animator list. Oh, look at there. You look into the, you show it to your family. Here's what we also know as consumers, right? When you watch a show, how many times do you read all the credits?
Probably
Sure.
not very many.
99% of people skip to the next episode, especially now that they have a button that does
They have
it.
the skip button now
They have the
is
skip button. And before they still wouldn't stay. That's when you go grab a drink. And
yeah,
when they look at a show like a Shonda Rhimes show, it doesn't matter if you were a grip or even if you are a writer. What are people going to remember? It's a Shonda Rhimes show. They're
right.
not going to remember your name in the credits. They're going to
Very
remember
true.
creators that own it. They're going to remember the network. And that's something you cannot change. And also, you shouldn't, because once again, it's not actually your product. You just provided a service on it. And that's where I feel when you do your
Amazing.
own work, you do need to remember that because once it is your own work, you need to manage it with a correct mindset. Because sometimes you will hire contractors to help you. Sometimes you will have to represent yourself in front of people. Like I see a lot of frustration from book publishers now that I'm in a lot of like physical publishing.
Yeah,
They're like, we don't get it. Like a lot of the writers come in and then, they do the work, they deliver the script, and then they don't want to do any marketing. And it's like, this is your own book. You got the opportunity that I've literally crossed, I went across the ocean just to be able to do this kind of stuff. And I see that and it drives me insane because I'm like, you got an opportunity that such a small percentage of people in the world would ever be able to do, right? To get like just percentage wise. This is like winning the lottery, even if you're not turning rich from it.
right.
It's insane. A lot of people are fighting from it, and you had it. And when you're marketing it or when you're marketing yourself, it's not necessarily for the short-term gain. It's not necessarily for the publisher. It's for you. It's for you to get your name out there. It's good business practices. So there's a lot of things like that that I feel are so contradictory and undermining to artists if they get into these mindsets. Uh,
hmm
the inability to address the fact that contracts are a thing that can also be
Contracts.
fiction,
Wow.
understanding how they work. I had to deal with a lot of lawyers because of startup. I can this was startup was boot camp for pretty much everything for me. Like I've already had
Wow.
a lot of interest in these things, but you are just forced to because as a startup founder, me and my co-founders, we all of a sudden had staff. It wasn't just us. Once you start raising funds to build a product, you're hiring people. They have to pay the bills, and you're the one in charge making sure that they can do it. So you're responsible for them. And if you're somebody who isn't a complete sociopath, that should matter to you a lot, right? And it's a lot of pressure. So it's funny, like, when you talk about the struggle of oh, and you don't have to struggle in the same way, maybe, but I had to struggle in a lot of different ways because if you put yourself out there like that, and I can tell you it is a grind and you have to have such thick skin because even like pitching shows and getting them optioned, which I've done before, getting publishing deals, 99% no's. It's
Wow.
99% rejection every
Wow.
single day, and you're fighting for that 1%. And what does everybody see? Everybody sees that 1%. Oh
The
my God, this
1%.
guy pulled it off. He's just fucking soaring, right? What is it in practice? It is a lot of rejection. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of iteration. If
Wow.
you can't get what you want, what do you do? Well, option number one, I guess this is never going to happen. Option number two, you go, what can I learn from this? How
hmm
can I try again? How can I try again somewhere else? This kind of experience teaches you a lot. And if you do stick to a good code of ethics, which I'd like to believe that I do, it also keeps you honest and it keeps you realistic. Because there's always the danger of like, well, you just turn cynical about it. And
Yeah.
you can be, But the minute you accept the fact that this is just going to be a part of your life if you want to achieve that goal, well, you better learn some new skills. And it's never bad to learn new skills. It's never bad to learn new things, even if you don't like what you've learned, which I can tell you, going through the tech startup ecosystem, boy, oh boy, did I learn a lot of
Wow.
things I did not like.
The 99% versus 1% is just such a it's such an incredible thing because that immediately registers in your mind and you only think about like the achievements and you only think about, oh
Yeah.
yes, like this is, but no one ever sees the amount of times that you actually had to go and have someone say, no, I'm not going to fund this, or no, this is not going to be made into something.
Yep.
And shake their hand and say, thank you very much for your time.
Yep.
And you literally dust yourself off. I don't know why I'm thinking of Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, but I
Yeah.
always loved that Wile E. Coyote. Every time he would fail, he'd have his stuff out and he'd be writing the next sort of way that he could capture. I guess you can think of the Roadrunner as success. It's
Yeah.
constantly trying to elude elude us, but we're constantly trying to
Absolutely. By the way,
capture it.
I always wanted to know who is his like TNT supplier because he's got a lot of it, and I have questions. Like, how is this not flagged? But anyway, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's what people can see. They see the end result, they see the flashiness, and they go, "Oh my God, yes." But it is struggle. It is hard, incredibly. I think there was I don't remember which comic artist posted this recently, and I love that post. He basically posted, "Here are how many pitches I do a year, and it's like a pie chart, and here's the percentage of how many of them actually gets published." And that's a
Wow.
big name, right?
Wow.
The fact is, when you go into this, it is highly competitive. You have to be in a mindset of, I need to be as good as I can, but I also need to network because we know this for sure. That job in Starburns, you knew me, there was an opportunity. I'm like, hey, it's a friend,
100%.
matchmaking done. Knowing the right people, that's the whole approach of you go into the studio and go, who's in charge here? Who do I talk to? That's why I did that because I knew that that was absolutely key because you can have the best pitch and best product and best IP that has ever been conceived in the history of man, and nobody will ever see it if you can't get it through the right doors. And
Amazing.
that's the reality, right? So my now thinking of it in this way and also thinking of it in terms of my goal was always be able to do your own thing no matter what medium is in. Now all of a sudden all of it makes sense, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like I said, it's almost like you knew the future in a way. You knew like, all these things, these dominoes would start, falling. Um, but it definitely makes a lot more sense now to see how your mind works and the fact that you never viewed yourself as one dimensional, and I think again, like that is something that all of us can take a chapter out of your book from and say, it's time to look at yourself in a totally new way. If you're not innovating, or at least trying to innovate in some way, shape, or form, you're kind of dead in the water. You're kind of allowing yourself to become the next dinosaur, and go extinct. And I think again, like if I may ask this question, uh, where do you see yourself in the next, what, 7 to 10 years? Like what new dreams do you have cooking up, or is it something you can't talk about due to contracts? But I'm always curious to know like what the next thing is going to be for you.
yeah, it's the reason it's difficult to answer is because 10 years is such a massive
Yeah, that's a long time.
I can tell you what the dream scenario is because it kind of never changed. Like in a sense, I'm living a scenario right now that I have to force myself to reappreciate every single time because again, I've gotten shows option and stuff like that before, but getting something into stores, seeing now I'm doing like I'm a guest in like different like fan expos, and I'm doing like panels in Comic-Con. This was a dream of mine years ago. I do remember this vividly. I went to like the first ever like Comic-Con when I moved to California. I went to like San Diego, and I did it for a few years until I was just like, okay, it's the same every year. But I do remember telling, and my wife remembers it because she quotes it, where I basically told her at some point, I'm not gonna go to these ever. I'm not gonna go to these again until the next time I appear in one of them. It's gonna be for my own work. It's gonna be when somebody
Wow.
invites me to promote my own work. And it
Wow.
took about 5 years for that reality to happen. Did I know it was gonna take 5 years? Absolutely not. But but the fact is, that's what I always do. I kind of like I stick that flag. I'm like, this is what I'm gonna try and gun for, knowing that maybe that's not how things are gonna work out. Because often you can't actually predict where you're gonna be, but you can set goals and you can see how far you get. And that journey towards that goal may take you somewhere completely different and equally as good, right?
Right.
So that's the best that I can do. I can tell you here is the milestone. Here's the mountain that I want to climb. But in practice, even if I make 90% of my way into this mountain and then end up finding some other trail, taking a pivot and ending up on a different valley, and that valley is amazing and it exposed. Hell yeah. So predicting,
Nice.
no. Setting milestones, yet. So a lot of what I've been doing in the last few years, this is me finally getting to the answer. Um, a lot of my strategy, because I kind of saw the bubble coming and going like, well, there's not going to be, if we try, I told this to Elliot years ago, like if we try to push stuff into the boom right now of content, everything's going to end up on a shelf and going to end up getting canceled. And we also wanted to just be able to actually get our stuff out there, starting to get established as creators. Um, Comic books at the time did not see what was about to happen, and they were on a buying spree. So it was a very good time for us to get into this industry, which I really love. It's kind of where I started. I feel like, yeah, like both you and me, almost every 2D
Hmm.
animator in the history of mankind started from comics because it's the path
Comics,
with this,
for sure.
right? But my goal is never, hey, I am going to just make a thing and that's it. It's out there and it's done. I want to build the kinds of things that inspired me to get into this field to begin with. You know me for years, so you also know I wear my fandom on my sleeve. That has never changed. I'm in my 40s now, for God's sakes. But I'm a fan of the mediums that I work in. This is the completely non-cynical part of me, right?
Hmm.
Um, and the things that I've always aspired to do is literally creating these kinds of cross-media franchises, right? Oh, I was the big fan of like, Ninja Turtles. So, like uh you watch the
That's a
show,
big
you're a
one.
big fan, then you buy the toys and there's a video game. Oh my God, and how crushing it is when it's garbage, right? But the fact is, that's what I wanted to do, right? Always. I was like, I want to create a thing that is it's what inspired me to get into the arts to begin with. I want to do that for other people. I want to do that for myself, right? Because I believe that I have a voice that's worth whatever putting out there. And that's what I started to do in the last few years. So in many ways, the comics to me were always a good way of it just it's a medium that I love. Create something, you found an opportunity, you get it out there, amazing. You're
Hmm.
starting to build your voice. That on its own, fantastic. If you look at what I've been doing in the last few years, definitely with like something like The Last Wardens, and now with Solar Sisters, which is the next book that me and Elliot have coming out, I use all of those skills that we've just discussed, me going into startup, all of this business development, me dealing with new media project, with licensors, with lawyers. That is a lot of, that is a vast network. It's a lot of institutional knowledge that I just have in how to package these things together, more as a producer than anything else. So I create my own thing and then I seek out, okay, what partnerships can I find to create adaptations? And that is a journey that I always make sure, and I can tell you that is terrifying every single time. I come in with all the confidence and bravado. It is absolutely terrifying because people do have some, like, I feel like I've, with my own partners and the people around me, there is a lot of earned, and I feel very fortunate to have this, but a lot of earned credibility and trust. And I cannot take this for granted. So when I work with other partners, even if it's just a publisher, I'm like, I feel the pressure to make this worth their time. You took a
Mm.
gamble on me, and by God, I'm going to make this blow up. And I'm going to do this by taking on challenges where I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing, but by God, I'm going to make it work. And every time I do this, A, it is terrifying, nerve-wracking, and probably ages me, in a few years, everything just because of the stress. But it forces me to learn so many things on the go. And when it works, you get stuff like, with Last Wardens, we had the comic series. The minute I knew there's a product out in the market, somebody already paid for it, there's marketing around it, it's out there. It's sexy, right? What can I do with it?
Absolutely.
We ended up having multiple adaptations around The Last Wardens, including a fully financed and produced audio drama with Felicia Day and with Mark Meir and with a whole bunch of like people that, like we got to do like
Wow.
voice direction session with Mark Meir, and Elliot, who's like a big Mass Effect fan, was just like going nuts. Um, and all these people were wonderful, right? But that is kind of a dream come true. Oh my God, my thing was just adapted, and I have a celebrity on it, and I have like I can
Wow.
tell you when I started looking for adaptations for this thing for us, I had no idea where it was going to lead me. No freaking clue, right? But I knew that I knew just enough by that point to maybe make progress. And that's enough of a motivation for me to go, you know what? Fuck it, let's do it. And
Just do it.
the end goal is we ended up with the audio drama. We ended up with a licensed tabletop RPG that this year is getting like bigger distribution through Simon and Schuster, and we ended
Nice.
up with a soundtrack through like Warner Music's ADA and working with a label, and all of that happened in a span of 8 months after the title was announced. And when that happened, I went, you know what? There is something here. Now with Solar Sisters coming out, the immediate thought that I had was like, how do I do this again, but different? How do I all of a sudden break into other industries that I've never touched in before, or fields, or the types of products? And that is my long-term goal. Not every deal that I get with publishers allows me to do it because some of them are just more strict in terms of IP ownership, and some of them
Right.
do. Whenever they do, that is the thing that I want to do. So, dream scenario, if you're asking me, where do you want to be 10 years from now? Any of these endeavors that I create, my hope is that I can grow them into longevity so that you have something that's ongoing. Because you always want to have like you can have moderate success or you can have a hit. Everybody wants a hit so you can keep growing it, right?
Exactly.
I want to be able to keep growing at least one of these endeavors to the point where I can take it all the way back to where I started career-wise. Animation, film. But even if it never goes all the way up there, think of all of the avenues you will reach until then. Audio,
Yeah.
games, like, you never know where it takes you. But at this point, I
So
have
true.
been so deeply involved with, and when I say involved, I don't mean, oh, I come in, I listen to people. No, actual production, right? Because I'm both hands-on and dealing with the business aspect of it. So you learn a lot and you ask a lot of questions. And so all of a sudden, it opens this avenue that allows me to just take really, really risky experiments where I just go like, I have no idea where this is gonna go, and let's see. And sometimes I'll get crazy people going like, "Hey, I've worked with you for years. If I literally just had this. I'll be able to talk about this more in a few months. But one of
Sure.
those adaptations tied to Solar Sisters is the perfect example of that, where a person that I cherish dearly, it started as a professional relationship, right? We started working together more than 12 years ago. And since,
Mm.
as I moved from, like, hey, just production to more directing, supervision, stuff like that, all of a sudden it wasn't me paying him, it was my boss paying him, right? So we had this very good, both friendly and business relationship. And when I wanted to do once again, venture into a field, medium, and industry where I have no business being in, But I love the medium and I know just enough about it and I have something to offer. I literally told him, hey man, here's a crazy idea. I presented the adaptation idea for him and I was like, I cannot promise you. Like, I don't have a budget for this, right? For that one specifically. I'm like, this is a sweat equity thing. I know we work really well together. I cannot promise you that this will go anywhere, but I can promise you I will do everything I can to try. But it's totally up to you, right? You're a working professional. And he was just like, all right, if you like flip the tables, what do you think I'm gonna say? And I'm like, I don't want to pursue, but that's a thing. That's years of trust, right?
Yeah,
And
real
whenever
years of
I
trust.
yeah, and whenever I take on this challenge, again, even with all this bravado, I can tell you it is so scary and it is so stressful because I
Wow.
always try to think of like, I don't want to disappoint this person. He has put so
Yeah.
much trust in me, and I know that he knows the risks, and I know that he doesn't have any and it doesn't matter. I managed to bring him in and he trusts me. I have to make this worth it. And
Wow.
that mindset I feel really pushes me to take risks. Like good risks. The kinds of like, well, fuck it. Let's just try this, see if it works. Let's try to break through here. Like you end up challenging yourself in ways that you never thought you would. And it also
Wow.
makes you a little bit more resilient. If we're talking about
Sure.
percent rejection, finding these paths means that you're going through a rat maze of no, 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 maybe, maybe, maybe. Yes, that's what it takes.
It's almost like the real talent is your perseverance. I mean, that to me, I think is your like absolute, guiding light. You have this undying belief in, tomorrow and what we can do, going forward. So it's again, like they always say, like still water goes stale, you're like
Yeah.
a river of moving water, just always moving toward a direction. And I think that's a really good thing for not only this next generation coming up, but people like myself, who are finding different things and new things to do creatively, not necessarily like just for financial gain, but also artistic. Um,
Yeah.
and again, it's really like I think the slowdown has really given me a lot of things that I didn't think I had before, and this podcast,
Yeah.
is one of those things, you know, um, not a huge moneymaker or anything, but it was always something that I was interested in because I'm like, hey, I listen to podcasts, I find a lot of inspiration and a lot of things that I can take from, conversation. And sometimes to me, it becomes even more interesting than the art itself, is just talking about the art and someone's approach to life and their approach to this, because this is in a lot of ways what I would do in studio, especially in my, first 2 to 3 years of working in animation. I would stay late and I would talk to all the guys who'd been doing it for 20 plus years and just literally rattle off questions. Well, why'd you do this? Well, why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
And I never met one person, including the guy cleaning up the place at night, who didn't want to tell me their story and didn't want to tell me
Yeah.
or give me good advice and say, you know what, if I had a chance to do it over, I might try this, this, and this. Um, so I think it's such a great thing that people, especially someone like yourself, is being gracious with that information, not just hoarding it to themselves, but saying, here, this is how I approach life, and this is how you can do it as well, or maybe find your own way, through the inspiration of, having that artist hat, that business hat, and thinking about that 99% versus 1%, and if you can make peace with that, and
Yeah.
say, okay, like that's just a normal part of this process. I think incredible things, amazing things, like you said, cross-platform things could be very much, a possibility. Just behind me right now, my background are a lot of those franchises you were talking about that
Yeah.
I've also inspired me as well.
Yeah.
Especially Turtles. I
Oh yeah.
love that story. I
Me
absolutely
too.
adore that story, and I think it's such a beautiful uh, friendship that those guys had in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, I hope they're still friends now. I can't remember if they're still, close anymore, but that friendship created something so spectacular and, life-changing for me growing up, as a kid. And now as an adult, I can appreciate it in a totally different way. And like you were saying with the licensing and cross platforms, they were one of the true innovators of,
Yeah.
bringing all those things to life. Um, but again, Amit, thank you so much for doing this. Again, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You're a busy guy. Where can people find you if they want to book you for professional services, and then also socially? I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing, Instagrams or anything like that, but where can people find you?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate all of this, and your feedback and your view compliments me greatly, because sometimes I always, again, you're stuck in your own head. You're like, I am an insane person. What am I doing? Uh, but yes, people can find me everywhere. I do a lot of consultation, especially nowadays, creative consultation, business consultation within the creative industries. Very easy to find me nowadays because I've been doing a lot of public things, public speaking, panels, da 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 da. I'm kind of out there. So my website, which is just my name, amittishler.com, you can find a lot of information about both my personal work and my professional work there, as well as a contact form which you could just reach me directly to book these kinds of consultations. For anything social, I am on pretty much every social media platform because of my own products coming out and me having to do a lot of marketing. So I'm on Instagram, like amit.tishler.com. I'm on all of them. You can find me on Google
Yeah.
and Facebook. Like I am so easy to find nowadays. It's ridiculous. So at this point, I have a pretty big digital footprint. I do want to say this as kind of a wrap up, because you touched on something that is so important for people in creative fields to both talk about and maybe shift their mindset about. One of and I'm sure you probably know this about me. There are very few things in this world that infuriate me more than the very concept of gatekeeping. I think it is one of the most toxic, selfish, weak traits that somebody can have.
Mm.
And I can tell you one of the reasons I am very open about talking about this, not just to students, but to anybody out there who enters a creative field, in terms of again, it's just sharing my philosophy. In the end, I tell this to my students as well. I managed to do what I did in a very specific way that worked for me. That does not mean that is the only way, right? People will hear a lot of different versions of doing something similar or reaching different kinds of successes in a lot of different fields by doing maybe even the polar opposite of everything that I'm doing. And that's valid as well. Because the truth is, like, again, I have a certain look, I have a certain personality. There are people in this world that won't get away with the same behavior that I have. And no, and that is an important thing to acknowledge. And it's not something I take for granted. So people need to find their own versions, and also do their research, but in a positive way. Do exactly what you were saying. Talk to as many people, get as many versions of this journey as they can, because when they find something that makes sense to them and feels right, they'll be able to iterate on it from there. So if what I say, somebody listens to that and goes like, yeah, I don't think I can do any of this, that's okay. That doesn't mean you won't be able to succeed in what you're trying to achieve. Just talk to enough people, or find out enough, or investigate enough so that you do find that version of yourself. Anybody, especially in media, that has all the confidence comes to you and says, this is how things work, do not listen to a word of what they have to say,
Wow.
because no one knows how anything works. There's a million ways of doing things, right? So find your own path, but it is good to listen to these things, because you'll find which truths work. Now, this brings me all the way back to why I am doing this. When I first moved to LA, one of the biggest breakthroughs I have ever had. Actually, two of them, both in
Mm.
how I found my first job and how I have learned probably, I don't know, a massive percentage of just like core information that is held up so well on how the Hollywood IP ecosystem works were two incidents. One of them, I needed a job very urgently because I was on a work visa with a lot of limitations, right?
Hmm.
And the US is not very immigrant friendly in that sense. So I was like, I have to find someone really, really fast to hire me. It was literally me doing cold reach outs on LinkedIn, hitting one guy who just agreed to talk, just responded, called me, gave me a breakdown and said, look, you're a professional, but if you want to get a job like this, do X, Y, and Z. And I was very attentive. And in the end, it was like, you know what? Here's the studio that I started working with. Talk to this person. Here's his email. Go for it. Offer him this. He's going to take the offer. That was my first job. And by the way, that relationship carried forward when I was a creative executive for like Empty Clip Studios before the startup. Years later, that company that I worked with, Way Forward, joined in as a partner on a big project that we did with like Denny Elfman, where they just brought in
Wow.
and became like a production studio for all the art. And it was amazing. It's a completely different dynamic. But the point is, I would not have even survived my visa expiration if this guy didn't just show me kindness that he didn't have to give, right? He was just like, I was there before, right? All right, I'll talk to you because you're willing to listen. I'll give you this tip. By the end of it, you impressed me enough. Go for it. I feel confident giving you this name. The same thing happened to me about a month later because I was hustling really hard to get all these things because again, you're in a very vulnerable position from just a
Hmm.
legal perspective. You're like, I need to find a job, I need consistency, I need to do all these moves just so I can stay, which is a lot of pressure. Um, I was trying to understand at a certain point, again, how to break into, hey, how do I find literary representation? I wanted to start pitching shows. I wanted to start doing my own work. I wanted to understand as much as I could. I ended up through a friend getting connected to a very interesting person who I will not name, but I am very thankful to him. He was a supervising producer on a massive show that everybody knows, which is why I'll never address it. Who ended up, I literally chatted with him on Facebook years ago because we were connected, and he was a very stern, difficult human being. But
Mm.
as we were chatting, I was telling him what I want to do. Had all these questions, the agencies, how do I do this? Eventually, he gives me these like filtering questions just to see if I'm worth even talking to. And then he goes, give me your phone number. I'm going to call you from a private number. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. He
Whoa.
calls me, and for the next 2 hours, that man drilled drilled me with his entire career story. He's somebody who is already retired. He's rich, and as a just as a point of fun, he decided to burn all the bridges on the way out and tell every executive in Hollywood what he thinks about them, which
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
But in those 2 hours, this like very bitter, cynical conversation I had with him, I can tell you so much of what he told me. Not all of it, but 90 something percent held up to this day. And that was
Mm.
amazing. And that was just an act of kindness, right? He basically
Wow.
was like, I'm going to spend 2 hours of my time talking to this guy because he's tenacious. Like, I'm gonna give him the chance and he can do whatever. And after that, he did more than that. He made some amazing introductions for me. And I told him, like, hey, can I take you out to dinner? Like, I want to thank you somehow. And he was like, nah, it's fine. Just go do your thing. I'm like, holy crap. So
Wow.
that to me was such a game changer that whenever people
Beautiful.
come in and they ask me, I will always be open to doing this. Always, because it is so important. Because I would not have anything if somebody wouldn't have done this for me. So I take
Wow.
that as something that has to be passed on because I think if you influence people in this way, they are likely to do the same for others. So that's why.
Amazing. Incredible. Wow. I feel uplifted. I feel inspired. Um, that is amazing. I mean, again, like I said, your story, your life, I mean, it's gonna make one hell of a movie one of these days, you know?
Now I just have to make sure, and now I just have to make sure that my death is glorious enough to make
Right.
everybody jealous. I don't know if I'm gonna pull this off, but give me some time.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much again. I know you said you were in Canada at the moment, so
Yes, that is a recent me and my wife moved to Vancouver last year.
so exciting. I'm working with Toon Boom at the moment. I think they're out
Mm,
of Toronto,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I keep bugging them to have me come and visit. I was actually scheduled, I think, to come out when COVID hit, unfortunately. So like that trip got canceled. But I've always had a very soft spot for Canada, in my heart.
Vancouver is gorgeous after years of living in North Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, Vancouver's it's an
I
upgrade.
I saw a little bit out of your window while it was open,
Oh
and
yeah, you saw that.
yeah,
Yeah. I had to
it
close it because
is.
the light is killing me, but it's beautiful out here.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, So hopefully, like I said, if we cross paths at any convention that you got coming up, man, it'd be great to take you out to
Absolutely.
dinner or to lunch or something, man, and catch up. But
Be my honor.
awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you again.
Thank you.